The unheard voice. The celestial Nexus station hung like a massive crystalline spider in the void between the Orion and Perseus arms of the Milky Way. Its spinning habitation rings house representatives from 27 species, all members of the Galactic Consortium. Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of her modest laboratory, watching the distant stars with a heavy heart. After 3 years as the only human researcher in the Xenobiology division, she had finally made progress. Real progress, only to have everything come crashing down around her. Dr. Chen, the station's VI announced through the comm system, your presence is required in adjudication chamber 14 in 30 minutes. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Acknowledged. The summons wasn't unexpected. For the past week, the station had been in an uproar over the disappearance of a Threshian molecular analyzer. Cutting-edge technology worth more than Sarah would earn in 5 lifetimes. Somehow, she had become the prime suspect. As she prepared for the hearing, Sarah meticulously gathered her research logs, access records, and alibi evidence. The Threshian device had gone missing during the same time window she had been deep in her own experiments. Surely the data would exonerate her. The adjudication chamber gleamed with polished blue stone imported from the Threshian homeworld. Judge Calvex, a 7-foot-tall Threshian with crystalline growths protruding from his shoulders, presided over the proceedings. His 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his angular face, regarded Sarah coldly as she entered. Dr. Sarah Chen, human, assigned to Xenobiology Research Division, announced the court attendant, a slender Nelvarian whose translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Sarah stood at the defendant's podium, trying to appear confident despite the weight of alien stares from the assembled witnesses and officials. You stand accused of theft of Threshian property, specifically a Class 7 molecular analyzer, Judge Calvex stated, his translator rendering his complicated tonal language into standard galactic English. How do you respond? Not guilty, Your Honor. I can prove I was in my lab during the entire. Calvex raised a 3-fingered hand, cutting her off. The evidence against you is substantial. Security logs show your biometric signature was the last registered in the storage facility before the device was reported missing. That's impossible, Sarah protested. I haven't been to the storage facility in weeks. My access logs will confirm. Silence. The judge interrupted. Humans are notorious for their disregard of proper protocol. Your species has been admitted to the consortium on a probationary basis, and this incident only confirms the concerns many have expressed. Sarah felt her face flush with indignation. Your Honor, with all due respect, I have the right to present evidence in my defense. The gallery murmured, several aliens making their species equivalent of derisive laughter. Judge Calvex's crystalline growths flashed with patterns of blue and purple, a sign of irritation Sarah had learned to recognize. You have no such right. This is not a human court with your excessive procedural rules. The consortium's adjudication code is clear. When evidence of guilt reaches probability factor of 0.87 or higher, the adjudicator may proceed directly to sentencing. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. But the evidence is circumstantial at best. If you would just review my. The penalty for theft of Threshian intellectual property is severe, Calvex continued as if she hadn't spoken. However, given your status as the only human researcher on this station and the diplomatic implications, I am inclined toward leniency. The judge's secondary eyes blinked in sequence, a Threshian display of calculated judgment. You are hereby fined 250,000 consortium credits. Your laboratory access is restricted to supervised sessions only, and you will be placed on probation for 1 standard cycle. 250,000 credits. It was more than 3 years' salary. Sarah would be ruined, her career destroyed, and all without even being allowed to speak in her own defense. This hearing is concluded, Judge Calvex announced, rising to his full imposing height. Wait, Sarah called out desperately. This is a miscarriage of justice. I demand the right to appeal under Section 17 of the Consortium Charter. The chamber fell silent. Invoking Section 17, the right of appeal based on procedural violations, was rarely done, especially by a representative of a junior species. Calvex's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. You may file your appeal within 3 station cycles. It will, of course, be reviewed by a panel of senior adjudicators. The contempt in his voice made clear what he thought of her chances. As the chamber emptied, Sarah remained frozen at the podium, clutching her unused evidence files. A gentle touch on her arm startled her. "That was brave, if foolish," said a melodic voice. Sarah turned to find Elira, a Vexeri scientist she occasionally collaborated with. The feathered alien's expression was difficult to read, but her voice contained notes of concern. "I didn't steal anything, Elira." "I believe you," the Vexeri responded, surprising Sarah. "But belief doesn't matter in consortium justice. Evidence does, and they believe they have it." "Someone framed me," Sarah whispered. The access logs were falsified. Elira's head crest flattened, a sign of serious thought. "That would require high-level security clearance. Come to my quarters tonight. It's not safe to talk here." Later that evening, in Elira's sparsely decorated living space, Sarah learned why the Vexeri had reached out. "There have been other thefts," Elira explained, activating a holographic display. "Minor items at first. No one noticed the pattern. But I've been tracking discrepancies in the inventory system for months." The display showed a list of missing items, mostly research equipment and specialized components. "Why haven't you reported this?" Sarah asked. "Because the missing items all share one characteristic," Elira replied, her voice lowering. "They're all components that could be used to construct a quantum entanglement communicator." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's impossible. QE communicators are theoretical. No species has successfully built one. Precisely why someone would go to great lengths to acquire the components secretly." Elira's feathers rippled in agitation, and why they needed a scapegoat when the thefts became too obvious to hide. "But why me?" "You're human," Elira stated simply. "Your species is new, untrusted, and you've been making breakthroughs in your research that have made certain, influential individuals uncomfortable." Sarah's mind raced. Her recent work on cross-species genetic compatibility had implications for medical treatments, but also potentially for bioweapons. She had been careful to follow all ethical guidelines, but she knew some consortium species viewed human scientific progress with suspicion. Who would have the authority to falsify security logs? Sarah asked. "That's what we need to discover before your appeal," Elira replied. "The station's security system has redundancies, backups that even senior officials can't easily access." Sarah straightened, a plan forming in her mind. "My specialty might be xenobiology, but I did minor in computer systems at the academy." She pulled out her personal tablet and began typing rapidly. "If we can access the quantum-locked backup logs from the environmental control systems, they might show discrepancies with the official security records." Elira's head crest rose in surprise. "Those are isolated systems. How would you access them?" Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Humans have a talent for finding unorthodox solutions, and right now I have nothing to lose." For the next 3 days, Sarah worked tirelessly, sleeping only when absolutely necessary. She called in favors from other researchers, analyzed environmental data patterns from the storage facility, and constructed a timeline of all known thefts. What emerged was a pattern so clear she couldn't believe no one had seen it before. When the time came to file her appeal, Sarah didn't just submit a standard request. She compiled a comprehensive dossier detailing not only her innocence, but also identifying the real culprit behind the thefts. But she kept one crucial piece of evidence to herself, something she would reveal only during the appeal hearing. As she submitted the appeal files, Sarah received a message on her comm unit from an anonymous sender. "Dangerous waters. Swim carefully." She didn't need to guess who had sent it. Someone knew she was getting close to the truth. The night before her appeal hearing, Sarah sat in her quarters reviewing her presentation one final time when her door chime sounded. Hand hovering over the emergency alert button, she called out, "Who is it?" "Maintenance," came the reply. "Routine check of environmental systems." Sarah frowned. Maintenance checks were announced in advance and never conducted during night cycle. She silently activated her tablet's recording function and moved to a defensive position behind her desk. "Verify your authorization code," she demanded. A pause, then the sound of something small being slid under her door. Sarah approached cautiously and picked up a small data chip. Later, reviewing its contents, her hands trembled. The chip contained unaltered security footage from the storage facility, footage showing exactly who had stolen the Threshen analyzer and planted evidence against her. It was the final piece she needed. Tomorrow, Judge Calvex and the entire appeal panel would hear her case, and this time, they would have no choice but to listen. The silent revolution. The appeal chamber was larger and more imposing than the regular adjudication chamber. Tiered seating surrounded a central podium where appellants would present their case. Today, every seat was filled. Word had spread throughout the station about the human researcher challenging the Threshen judge's ruling, something unprecedented in the consortium's recent history. Sarah stood at the center of the chamber, acutely aware of the hundreds of alien eyes fixed upon her. The appeal panel consisted of 5 senior adjudicators from different species, with Judge Calvex himself present to defend his original ruling. His crystalline growths pulsed with slow, confident patterns. He clearly expected this process to be a mere formality before affirming his judgment. Appeal hearing for case file Theta 738-2 is now in session, announced the chief adjudicator, a venerable Melosian whose age-modeled tentacles draped ceremonially across the bench. "Dr. Sarah Chen, you have invoked Section 17 of the Consortium Charter, alleging procedural violations in your hearing. You may present your appeal." Sarah activated her presentation system, and holographic displays flickered to life around the chamber. "Esteemed adjudicators," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I stand before you not only to prove my innocence, but to expose a conspiracy that threatens the foundational principles of the consortium itself." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The Melosian chief adjudicator raised a tentacle for silence. 3 days ago, I was found guilty of stealing the Threshen molecular analyzer without being permitted to present evidence in my defense. Today, I will demonstrate not only that I am innocent, but I will identify the actual thief and their purpose. Judge Calvex's secondary eyes narrowed. The appellant makes inflammatory claims without foundation. The evidence of her guilt was conclusive. Was it? Sarah challenged, activating the first display. "These are the security logs presented at my hearing, showing my biometric signature accessing the storage facility at the time of the theft." She tapped her console, and a second display appeared alongside the first. "And these are the quantum-locked environmental control logs from the same time period, which cannot be altered even by senior administrative override." The 2 displays showed different data for the same time period. According to the environmental logs, the temperature and oxygen composition in the storage area had changed to accommodate a Valkyrian physiology, not a human one. Furthermore, Sarah continued, bringing up a third display. "Station power consumption records show my laboratory was drawing significant power during the alleged theft, consistent with the xenogenetic sequencer I was operating at the time." She displayed her experimental logs and time-stamped results. The Melosian adjudicator leaned forward. "This suggests tampering with security records, a serious allegation. Do you have evidence of who might have done this?" "I do." Sarah activated another display, showing a comprehensive timeline of all missing equipment from the past 6 months. These thefts follow a pattern, targeting very specific technological components. When assembled, these components could theoretically create a quantum entanglement communicator, technology prohibited under Consortium Treaty 458P due to its military applications. The chamber erupted in shocked conversations. QE communication would allow instantaneous communication across any distance, a strategic advantage that would destabilize the careful balance of power in the galaxy. Silence, commanded the chief adjudicator. Dr. Chen, these are extraordinary claims requiring extraordinary evidence. I have that evidence, Sarah replied calmly, inserting the data chip she had received the night before. A new hologram appeared. Unaltered security footage, showing a high-ranking Valkyrian security officer, Commander Drex, removing the Threshen analyzer and then accessing the security systems to alter the logs. Commander Drex, Sarah stated, has been systematically stealing components and framing others when necessary. But the question remains, why would a decorated consortium security officer risk everything for prohibited technology? The chamber doors slid open, and guards escorted in a struggling Commander Drex. His black scales were dull with stress, his usual imposing presence diminished by restraints. "This is outrageous," he hissed. "On whose authority was I detained?" "Mine," said a new voice as another figure entered the chamber. Director Soren of Consortium Intelligence. The tall, silver-skinned Altarian moved to stand beside Sarah. Dr. Chen contacted my office with her suspicions, providing enough evidence to warrant investigation. Sarah nodded to Director Soren before turning back to the appeal panel. "But I haven't yet revealed the most important evidence, the reason I became a target." She reached into her pocket and produced a small device no larger than a credit chip. "This is my own invention, what I've been working on for the past year. It appears unremarkable, but it represents a breakthrough in subspace field manipulation." Sarah placed the device on the podium and activated it. A small holographic display appeared above it, showing real-time data. "This device detects quantum fluctuations in subspace. 3 months ago, I detected unusual patterns that I couldn't explain. At first, I thought they were natural phenomena, but as I refined my detector, I realized they were artificial. Someone was testing a prototype QE communicator." She brought up another display showing correlation data. These signals originated from Commander Drex's quarters, and they were directed toward coordinates at the edge of Valkyrian space, where unauthorized ships have been detected multiple times in recent months. Director Soren stepped forward. "Commander Drex has been passing classified information to a splinter faction of Valkyrians who reject consortium membership. They've been building a fleet beyond our borders, preparing for expansion." Commander Drex snarled, his composure finally breaking. "The consortium holds our people back. Humans join and immediately receive research grants, while projects vital to Valkyrian security are denied. This creature," he gestured at Sarah with contempt, "was getting too close with her subspace detection research. She had to be discredited." The chamber fell into stunned silence. Judge Calvex's crystalline growths had stopped pulsing entirely, a rare sign of total surprise in a Threshen. Sarah turned to face the appeal panel directly. "I was fined and nearly had my career destroyed, not because I stole anything, but because my research could expose a conspiracy. I was silenced without being heard, prejudged based on my species rather than facts." The chief adjudicator's tentacles writhed in agitation. "Judge Calvex, how do you respond to these revelations?" The Threshen judge seemed to shrink in his seat. "I follow the evidence presented to me. If that evidence was falsified." "You chose not to hear Dr. Chen's defense," interrupted another panelist, an elderly Ganneran whose symbiotic relationship with truth-sensing microbes made them particularly valued in judicial matters. "Our scans detect no deception in her presentation today. Had you allowed her to speak at the original hearing, this conspiracy might have been uncovered sooner." The chief adjudicator raised all 4 tentacles, signaling a formal ruling. "This appeal panel unanimously finds in favor of Dr. Sarah Chen. All charges against her are dismissed, all fines rescinded, and full laboratory access restored. Furthermore, we recommend a formal commendation for her role in uncovering this threat to consortium security." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, But she wasn't finished yet. She looked directly at Judge Calvex. "Your Honor, I don't seek punishment for your ruling. What I ask is something more important, that you and others recognize that humanity's place in the consortium should be judged by our actions and contributions, not by preconceptions about our species." She held up her subspace detector, this device that helped expose the conspiracy. Its core technology could revolutionize early warning systems for stellar phenomena, potentially saving millions of lives across multiple worlds. That's what humanity brings to the consortium, not just questions and challenges to the status quo, but solutions and innovations that benefit everyone. The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even Commander Drex had stopped struggling against his restraints, watching with grudging respect. Judge Calvex slowly rose from his seat. His crystalline growths began to pulse in a pattern Sarah had never seen before. Slow, deliberate, almost humble. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber, "the Threshen people value truth above all else. When truth is revealed, we must acknowledge it, no matter how uncomfortable. I rendered judgment in error, influenced by biases I did not recognize I harbored." He bowed his head, an extraordinary gesture from a Threshen to any other species. The consortium's strength lies in diversity of thought and approach. Today, you have taught this lesson to us all. In the days that followed, Sarah's story spread throughout the station and beyond. What had begun as a simple case of alleged theft had exposed not only a dangerous conspiracy, but also deep-seated prejudices within the consortium systems. Sarah found herself suddenly welcome in research divisions that had previously been cool to her presence. Alien colleagues who had kept their distance now sought her collaboration. Her subspace detection technology became the foundation for a new joint research initiative involving 5 different species. One evening, as she worked late in her now unrestricted laboratory, Director Soren visited her. "Your actions may have prevented a war," the Altarian said without preamble. "The Splinter faction has been neutralized, and the Valkyrian government has formally apologized to the consortium." Sarah nodded, continuing her adjustments to a new prototype. "I'm just glad the truth came out." "Truth," Soren mused, "is rarely simple in galactic politics, but sometimes it takes an outsider perspective to see patterns the rest of us miss." The director studied her thoughtfully. "The Consortium Intelligence Division has never had a human operative." Sarah looked up, surprised. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm suggesting that your talents might be wasted in purely academic research," Soren replied with the Altarian equivalent of a smile. "Consider it. We need people who aren't afraid to stand up and speak, even when no one wants to listen." After the director left, Sarah returned to her work, considering the offer. 3 months ago, she had been the lone human researcher, struggling for acceptance. Now she had helped expose a conspiracy, reformed judicial procedures for junior species, and potentially averted an interstellar conflict. Not bad for someone who wasn't even allowed to speak in her own defense. As she calibrated her newest device, Sarah smiled to herself. Humanity's voice in the consortium had been quiet for too long. Perhaps it was time for the galaxy to hear what they had to say.